Stop waiting for a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet and start becoming the person you need to be today. Your life is the only thing you truly own, so are you ready to finally take the wheel? Change is a word that tastes like iron and feels like a cold wind. It is perhaps the most difficult word in the human language because it implies the death of the familiar. Nobody really likes change. We are biological creatures designed for stasis, wired to seek the warmth of the comfort zone, even when that warmth is actually the fever of a slow decay. We crave the predictable, even when the predictable is killing us. But what happens when the walls of that comfort zone start to crumble? What happens when change is no longer a luxury or a New Year's resolution, but a biological necessity? What happens when our health, our very heartbeats, and the quality of our remaining years depend entirely on our ability to shed the skin we are currently in? We need to change, don't we? It is the fundamental question of survival. And yet, we must look deeply into the mirror and ask, how willing are we to actually make that change when the dopamine of the old habit starts calling our name in the middle of the night? We often treat change as if it were a circled date on a calendar, an external event that will be triggered by a milestone. We tell ourselves lies to protect our current state of being. We say, when I get married, I'll finally stop drinking. When I retire and the stress is gone, I'll start eating right. When I win the lottery and have all the time in the world, I'll focus on my mental health. When the clock strikes midnight on January 1st, I will become a new person. These are delusions. They are the mechanisms of procrastination that the mind uses to keep the status quo intact. Change is not a destination you arrive at. It is an internal decision. It is a quiet, often painful choice made in the silence of your own mind, long before the world sees the results. It is a process that demands consistency, discipline, and a relentless effort to achieve goals that feel miles away. This is why we must stop setting impossible standards and start setting realistic goals. We must respect our limits, acknowledging where we are weak, without letting those weaknesses immobilize us. The secret lies in overcoming them intelligently, not through brute force alone, but through strategy, support, and a profound understanding of the human condition. To understand change, we must first understand the anatomy of the comfort zone. It is a psychological state in which things feel familiar, and a person is at ease and in control of their environment, experiencing low levels of anxiety and stress. In this zone, a steady level of performance is possible. However, the comfort zone is also where dreams go to die and where health begins to stagnate. The brain is a master of efficiency. It wants to conserve energy by repeating patterns. This is why breaking an addiction or changing a lifestyle feels like a physical battle against your own biology. Your brain is literally wired to prefer the familiar poison over the unknown cure. Consider the story of a man we will call David. David was a high-functioning professional whose addiction was hidden in plain sight: food. For David, food wasn't just sustenance, it was a sedative. Every stressor at work, every argument with a spouse, every moment of loneliness was met with a high-calorie binge that silenced his anxiety for 20 minutes, only to replace it with hours of self-loathing. He had reached 400 pounds. His joints were screaming, his breath was shallow, and his doctor told him he wouldn't see his daughter graduate high school if he didn't pivot immediately. David's change didn't happen because he bought a gym membership. It didn't happen because he read a book on calories. It happened when he realized that his food addiction was a symptom of an emotional wound he refused to acknowledge. He had to enter a multidisciplinary program. He needed a nutritionist to relearn the chemistry of fuel, but more importantly, he needed a therapist to understand why he was trying to bury his feelings under layers of sugar and fat. He had to learn that a setback wasn't a failure, but a data point. David's journey was agonizing. In the first few weeks, his body revolted. Without the massive hits of sugar and salt, he felt a depression so heavy it was physical. This is the part people don't talk about. The withdrawal from food is just as real as the withdrawal from drugs. His brain was crying out for the dopamine spike it had become dependent on. This is where the consistency and discipline come in. He had to eat the meal he didn't want to eat and sit through the therapy sessions that made him cry. He had to face the reality that he had been using his body as a trash can for his emotions. Through consistent, disciplined effort, David reclaimed his body. He didn't wait for a special day. He chose the struggle of growth over the comfort of slow suicide. He worked with a medical team that monitored his blood pressure, and a coach who taught him how to move a body that had forgotten how to be active. This was not a 30-day challenge. It was the reconstruction of a soul. Then there are those like Sarah, whose battle was with the bottle. Alcoholism is a thief that steals your time, your relationships, and eventually, your soul. Sarah spent years telling herself she could quit whenever she wanted, usually after the third glass of wine in the evening. For her, the change became necessary when her liver began to fail, and the shadows under her eyes became permanent. She had to learn the hardest lesson of all. Discipline is not the absence of desire, but the mastery of it. She couldn't do it alone. The importance of medical follow-up cannot be overstated here. For someone like Sarah, the decision to stop was dangerous. Alcohol withdrawal can be fatal, and this is why the "just use willpower" narrative is so harmful. She needed a clinical environment to safely detoxify, to manage the tremors and the hallucinations and the crushing anxiety. But once the toxins were gone, the real work began. Sarah joined a support group and entered intensive psychotherapy. She learned that change is a multidisciplinary effort. You need the doctor for the body, the therapist for the mind, and a community for the spirit. She had to navigate the gray area of life without the numbness of alcohol. Every social event was a minefield, every stressor was a trigger. She had to learn to face her limits intelligently, rather than drowning them. She learned that the craving for a drink was actually a craving for connection or a craving for peace. Therapy gave her the tools to find those things without a liquid crutch. Her life didn't get easier because she stopped drinking. She got stronger because she started living. The reality is that we are all addicted to something. Whether it's a substance, a behavior, or just a way of thinking, we all have patterns that serve as a refuge from the discomfort of growth. Change requires us to step out of the shadows of these patterns. It requires us to stop waiting for the right time. The right time is a myth created by fear. If you wait until you feel ready, you will be waiting for the rest of your life. Readiness is a byproduct of action, not a prerequisite for it. You become ready by doing the thing you are afraid of. This journey of transformation is not a straight line, it is a spiral. You will encounter the same temptations again and again, but each time you meet them, you must meet them with a higher level of awareness. Consistency is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It is the mundane daily repetition of healthy choices that builds the armor of a new identity. You must be willing to be uncomfortable. You must be willing to be the person who says no when everyone else is saying yes to the old habits. This is where therapy becomes the most powerful tool in your arsenal. It provides the mirror you cannot hold for yourself. It uncovers the why behind the what, allowing you to dismantle the triggers that have kept you prisoner in your own life for so long. A multidisciplinary medical follow-up is essential because we are complex systems. You cannot fix a psychological problem with only physical tools, and you cannot fix a physical problem with only psychological tools. You need a synchronized approach. You need the blood work to see the damage, the nutrition plan to repair the cells, and the psychiatric support to balance the chemicals in the brain. When these elements work together, the internal decision of change has a foundation to stand on. Without this foundation, willpower is like a candle in a hurricane. True change also requires us to redefine our relationship with pain. We live in a culture that seeks to eliminate all discomfort through instant gratification. But growth is inherently uncomfortable. If you are not feeling the tension of the new, you are likely still trapped in the old. We must learn to respect our limits, acknowledging that we cannot change everything in a single day, but we must also refuse to let those limits immobilize us. We must push against them intelligently. If you can only walk for 5 minutes today, walk for 5 minutes. But tomorrow, walk for 6. That is the essence of discipline. It is the commitment to being 1% better than you were yesterday. We must also address the event mentality. When we tie change to a milestone, we give ourselves permission to fail if that milestone doesn't go perfectly. If the wedding is stressful, We drink. If the new year starts with a bad day, we give up on the diet. This is because we have externalized our power. When change is an internal decision, it doesn't matter what the date is or what the weather is like. It doesn't matter if you had a bad day at work or if someone broke your heart. The decision remains. The discipline remains. The effort remains. Think about the thousands of people who have walked this path before you. They were not superheroes. They were not born with more willpower than you. They were simply people who reached a point where the pain of staying the same became greater than the pain of changing. They were people who realized that their lives were slipping away through their fingers, one habit at a time. They chose to fight. They chose to seek help. They chose to be honest about their addictions and their weaknesses. And through that honesty, they found a strength they didn't know they possessed. This is the alchemy of change, taking the leaden weight of our mistakes and our addictions, and through the fire of discipline, transforming them into the gold of wisdom and vitality. It is a long process. It is a lonely process at times, but it is the only process that leads to a life worth living. You must be the architect of your own rescue. You must be the one to pick up the phone and make the appointment. You must be the one to put down the fork or the glass. You must be the one to show up to the therapy session when you'd rather stay in bed. As you move forward, remember that the most beautiful things in this world are often forged in the greatest heat. Diamonds are made under pressure. Gold is purified in the furnace. Your struggle is not a sign of weakness. It is the labor pains of a new version of yourself. Do not wait for the perfect conditions. Do not wait for the lottery, or the wedding, or the new year. The only time that has ever existed is right now. You have the power to make an internal decision that changes the trajectory of your entire existence. It will be hard. It will require discipline you didn't know you had. It will require you to ask for help. But on the other side of that effort is a life lived in the light, free from the heavy chains of addiction and the suffocating walls of the comfort zone. Change is not a threat. It is an invitation. It is the universe asking you if you are ready to finally meet the person you were always meant to be. It is the chance to wake up without the weight of guilt or the fog of substance. It is the chance to look in the mirror and respect the person looking back at you. Take that first step. Call the therapist, see the doctor, throw away the poison. Choose life, not because it is easy, but because you are worth the effort it takes to save yourself. The world is waiting for the version of you that is no longer hiding. May your journey be marked by a courage that defies your fears and a persistence that outlasts your doubts. May you find the strength to be your own hero, supported by the hands of those trained to help you heal. Your life is a masterpiece in progress, and every healthy choice is a brushstroke on the canvas of your future. Believe in the possibility of your own transformation, for that belief is the spark that lights the way through the darkest nights of the soul. If you love this story and want to hear more like it, please hit that subscribe button. It truly means the world to us and helps us grow. And hey, while you're at it, let's aim for 50 likes on this video. Help us smash that goal.